because today is going to be a fun one. We've got Needmore Designs here. That's right. And they are a Portland-based digital-focused design studio founded by Raymond and Candace Brigleb. Did I say that wrong? I did.
You said it right.
Oh, I did. All right.
Right.
Over a decade ago, they are focused on responsive websites for coffee, specialty food and drink, and other creative brands. Along the way, they've learned a lot about design, clients, negotiation, and generally running a studio that gets things done. Let's welcome Needmore Designs.
Thank you. All those rehearsals paid off. So I'm Ray. This is Candace. Hello. Needmore Designs is a studio that's in the old White Stag building. It's, you know, another college building there. So, but we've been around for 10, 11 years, and we're going to talk about, hopefully, some lessons that we learned. This is probably almost more maybe business focused, or at least how to get started. Some of the stuff we've done is basically web stuff. We tend to focus on coffee type clients, like specialty food and drink, and some other sort of related industries like that. So let's start out with the story. So I've been doing this on and off for like 20 years, but for a long time I genuinely didn't think you could make money at it. So I was instead in the coffee industry, and in Minneapolis. After I moved out here, was still working in coffee for a while at Stumptown, and decided to start making actual websites for clients. But I was still doing coffee, so I did one for Stumptown. And I should have seen if I could get a photo of that, but well, okay, here's the obligatory me making websites. I was actually making sound, and that's because originally we were doing lots of Flash websites. But about 10 years ago, Candace here came along, and we decided to make it into a business. So Candace, why don't you talk about that?
Hi. I hope you guys enjoyed the Scout books. I'm just going to say that we have someone in our studio that used to be in this department, Silka, and I asked her if there was anything we could do to make this really interesting, and she said they love gifts. I was like, sweet! So I brought some Scout books, and as I was leaving, she's like, gifts, the funny gifts, GIFs. So anyways, we tried. So, well, Ray was working in video and coffee and all these very interesting and design-oriented fields. I was in school, and I was studying anthropology first, and then I came to Portland and I was studying linguistics. And right about the time that we met, I was really interested in this idea of the power of the internet to tell stories. And I know that that word story gets used a lot, but 10 years ago, I was studying things like AOL and how people would converse online and in person, and the power of being able to put something online and have it stay and have people access it was just really amazing and interesting. So we started working together. And we were not in a garage. In the beginning, we were in kind of a small studio in a house that we were renting. And in that studio, it was all huge windows, and it would get so hot by midday that our computers would overheat and shut down. And so we would get up as early as we could. It's not an air conditioner, by the way. We should have had an air conditioner, yeah. So we would get up as early as we could, and we would work until the computers turned off, and then we would go out, and we would basically like hit the pavement and talk to people and try to get clients and just try to stir up any kind of noise that we could. And that tended to work. Some of what we did is like we made mugs once, and we were like, how can we get people to see these mugs? And we used to go to
J&M where they have like guest mugs.
Yeah. So we showed up once and we got breakfast, and as we were leaving, we left our mug on the table, and we brought a dirty one so they'd think it was used, and it became part of their mugs. And so people would tell us, like, I was at J&M and I saw your mug, just Needmore. And it's like, well, we were two people working out of our house, but we were kind of doing anything we could to get the word out. So I think that was kind of our start, was just, we probably put a lot of time into setting up clients and such.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, Flash websites. This was kind of our thing for a while. I don't know, kids us or parents, but it was really big and people were willing to pay good money for this. We had some cool local clients. It was a lot of fun. I had done some work doing video shows, so it was kind of like, it was cool because once you knew how to tell a story, Flash was a good way to do it. But really, they were single-page kind of brochure, animated, fun websites, and it was fun. But after a while, we kind of got lost in the sauce because, well, in 2007, the iPhone came out, which is sort of the nail in the coffin for Flash. It was clear that wasn't going to last, and it was also clear that the economy was going in the shitter. This was like 2008, so it was like we had to stop doing that, take a step back and figure out what direction is this business going in, because we're not going to be able to do this anymore. Those clients can't afford us anymore. So what we did was we struggled around for a year or two, but we decided we needed to focus on the technology first because we're working on the web, and that meant making websites that worked on a phone, that worked in WordPress, that did something that our clients could understand, that we could do more affordably, we could spend more time focusing on the design, and, well, bring more value to the clients, which just means like do stuff they can afford and do stuff that look good. And then we focused on getting the right kind of clients, because we realized we're wasting too much time in each project trying to pursue people in different industries. So that meant focusing on stuff that we knew. Coffee, mainly, and then like food and beverage, and more coffee. Really focus on coffee. Yeah, more food and beverage, and telling stories. I mean, this was a winery that we worked with, but the main thing for us was like they wanted to tell a story, and that really became our sort of angle. And this sort of happened a couple years ago, and as far as our business, it's on a much better track now because we figured those sort of things out. Now begins phase 2, where we talk about some of the tips.
When we started our business, neither of us knew anything about business. We were just really excited about designing and telling these stories. And so there are a few things that I think we've learned along the way that I really wish I would have known from day one. Never speak ill of clients. This is something that I see all the time in our industry. It's like you're in a meeting and it's a long meeting and it's arduous and you leave and you tweet like, that was the longest meeting of my life. And you feel like it's personal. Nobody's gonna see it, only it's Twitter, so everyone sees it. And what happens is 2 weeks later, another one of your clients sees that tweet and the meeting wasn't with them, but they don't remember the day they met with you. And so the next thing you know, everyone is thinking that you're talking about them in that way. And so we have this philosophy of really never, I mean, there are going to be hard days, there are going to be bad days, but never putting that out into the social sphere, or even personally, never around the studio. So, and the converse of that is that we try to be really good about not saying things like, I just saw my favorite client, because that tells all of the rest of your clients that they are not your favorite client. So, I kind of think about it like having a lot of kids. Not that they're infantile, but that you love them all and that you're important to each of them and that you would never have favorites and you would never talk poorly about them in front of other people. I think that's...
Yeah, I mean, the book Design is a Job, I think, by Mike Montero is a good sort of summary of that thought. That's probably a good one to read. Identifying and focusing on the right type of client. I kind of covered that already, but like people in the coffee industry actually want to work with us now because it's a really weird industry. There's lots of really weird stuff you'd never guess that actually matters to them. And at first we were afraid too because we thought, well, they're all competitors. We shouldn't work for like 2 competitors. But it's like, they're fine. Like we already know this stuff. We might as well take advantage of it. Focusing let us do things like say clearly on our website, who the hell we want to work for and get more of those clients so that we can be better at doing that type of project. So actually it's good.
And then once you get the project, always have a contract. So when we first got started, I would negotiate, and someone would say yes, and I'd be so excited, and then I'd get really nervous about handing them a contract, because what if that's the thing that makes them say no? And there were a couple of times we actually had people that were like, I'm not going to sign a contract, but I'd love to work with you. And twice I said, okay. And those were the hardest projects. Those were the times when someone didn't end up paying, because contracts basically just talk about how you're going to work together, what they're going to pay, when they're going to pay it, what you're delivering, and what happens if the project gets killed, so like a kill fee or something like that. We have a pretty short contract. It's 2 pages long. And if anyone is starting a web design business and they write me, I will send it to you, because I believe so strongly that you should be using these. I'm happy to have you use ours. Well, I mean, have a lawyer look at it.
I love it.
And also, one of the things that we always write into our contract is getting some payment up front. So we always ask for 1/3 of a project up front, and that's always non-refundable. So that means if we set up working with a client, they give us 1/3 of the project budget, and then we give them the time that we're going to be working with them. We don't schedule any other clients during that time. And so if a client were to end a project, it's kind of a big deal. So the fact that we've set aside that time, it's important and it's worth something. And it also means that a client already has some skin in the game when you get started, so they've already given you something, and that tends to make for a much better overall project.
Don't be a yes person. And I know that's hard, and it's especially hard when you've got a really big client, you're really excited, and then all of a sudden you've signed your contracts and everything, and then they send you a list of like 20 things they didn't think of that really need to be part of this project. For example, you have to say no, at least to some of them. You have to at least set that precedent up front. And that's always the hardest time to do it, and you're not, it puts you in this uncomfortable place, but you have to be used to that. Just saying no, saying, let's come back to those, let's just set them over here and focus on what we're doing here or whatever, but, don't just say yes. Oh, yes.
The other part of not being a yes person is that once you're working with someone, we tend to think of ourselves as collaborators. We think about that word a lot, and so we're not employees. And so if one of our clients, a lot of times clients will come to you like, can you make this button purple, say? And the easy thing is to say, sure, bam, purple. But the better thing is to say, what's going on? Why do you want a purple button? And it actually might be, my friend said that purple is a really good way to get people's attention, but we might know that a green button is actually what's going to get people to click more. And so instead of saying yes, just asking why, and figuring out, and then finding out whether that is actually the right action.
Good point.
And the other thing is admitting your mistakes right away. Like, a lot of people that go into design or programming, they're not people that really like confrontation or conflict. And so a lot of times what happens is you're programming away and you realize that something isn't working the way you thought it would. You might not even be able to do the thing that you thought you were going to be able to do. And the first reaction is usually to just kind of put your head down and keep working and hope one day it works. But what we found is that it's a lot better to just call our clients in and say, hey, this isn't working the way we thought. We're putting a bunch of time into it. Let's start talking about it. And half the time we'll find like, oh, I didn't even care about that at all. Just forget it. And sometimes we find a way around it. And so, or if you totally screw something up on their website and they call and they say, this thing seems weird, it's okay to say, oh my God, I think we did that. We're going to fix it right away, because they're so used to hosting companies saying the designer did it and the designer saying the hosting company did it that they don't really know who to trust anymore. And so if you can be a trustworthy person, even if you're saying, sorry, I did this thing, then you're going to have a better relationship overall.
Have you detected the color coding yet? So, we work with a lot of different people because we don't do the whole thing for people. Like a lot of time there's a print component or there's a development component or we need someone to help us with the logo. We work with a lot of people. You'd be surprised what we hear about other designers. And I'm sure that some of it's exaggerated because someone just wants to think that they're in a perfect relationship now and all their past relationships are crap. And that's human nature, but it's not true. We often have to go by those things when we recommend someone else to help us with a project or something like that. You'd be surprised how often this stuff gets around, and it's really just a matter of like doing those other things, like what Candace just said, like just be considerate, own your mistakes, go out of your way to own them. I mean, that's an opportunity to show how much better you are than other people in terms of helping a client. So yeah, don't be an asshole.
The other thing is just letting the people who you really want to work with know about it. Go into their space and say hello and tell them who you are and tell them why you're a big fan and why you think you'd be a great person to work with them. You'd be surprised how often that works. A lot of people aren't authentically walking into places and saying, I love what you do, here's why, how can I be a part of it? We had recently an experience where I read a book about how to let people know your intentions, and it basically said to make a list of everyone that I'd ever worked with that I really enjoyed, that I wasn't in touch with anymore. And so I made the list, and the person at the top of my list was someone that we'd worked with on a former project that was no longer with that, that company, and I wrote her, had no idea what she was doing. And I wrote her and I just said, you were one of the most fun people I've ever worked with, and I enjoyed that experience, and you know, we're still here if you ever need us, or if you're ever in town to get coffee. Within 24 hours, we were redesigning the website of a new coffee company that she had launched that I had no idea about. And so sometimes those things can just happen, and it's just good to do. Like, I don't even think she had remembered us or thought, I don't think that she probably would have called us anyways.
Just be part of the conversation means, you know, like obvious ways are like, you know, blogs and being on social media. But, you know, for us, it was also doing a podcast. I'm often surprised how many people listen to it or mention it or have been to the one live one that we did. But it's actually really helped, not just because we talk about stuff that people find interesting, and it gives us an excuse to get our name out there, but also because several of the people that we've had on have turned into clients, and like that's pretty rad. It's kind of a hidden bonus, and those podcasts are not hard to do. I mean, it's like we already got one of the mics here.
So new clients are hard to come by. They take a lot of work. You have to get your name out there, you get a bunch of people talking about projects, you write a lot of proposals, and eventually you find a good match and you start working together. And then you learn about the organization and everyone's roles, and by the end of your first project together, you pretty much have figured out how to be a good team. And so if you are thinking about starting a business, think about how you can keep long-standing relationships with clients. And part of that is being nice and all of that, and part of it, and honest and trustworthy and all of that. We have a client, Dolcezza, and they are amazing. They're in Washington, D.C. They make gelato. They're just getting into the coffee industry as well now, which is exciting. We've been working with them since about 2006. We made their first website. It was in Flash. It was very fun, and they were really excited about it at the time. And about a year ago, we redesigned their site. We brought their sales online. It's responsive. It's, you know, yada yada. So just really thinking about that. So it's always fun to get exciting new clients, but it's also just a really great thing to have clients that you've known for a long time.
This is kind of like similar to the one I said last, but get back to the community. That just means, like, as a designer, you can, you know, give, if you've designed like good templates for certain things, or you just want to give out an icon set as a developer, it might mean making an open source project. I guess as a designer it could too. You could partner with someone to make that, but That's just another good way to get your name out there. And back to you, Cam.
Okay, learn to take rejection, because having your own business is full of rejection, but it's okay. Things like people saying no to the design you've presented or the proposal. No is fine. In fact, no is sometimes an opportunity to chat a little bit more, stay in touch, and maybe later work together, which happened with our friends at Literary Arts. We worked with them, I think, back in 2004, and then they dropped us, and we had no idea why. And I would say just a few years ago, they got back in touch. We met for coffee, and they basically said, hey, someone came along when we were working together and offered to do everything for free for us. And so we said yes, and it didn't turn out so great. But you guys have always stayed in touch. You seem really nice. You guys want to start working together again. And we did, and they did not ask us to do work for free because they were over that. So sometimes I think just being okay with rejection, not taking it personally, and still just kind of saying, hey, you know, if things change, we're still here, is a good idea. One of the things that I did to get used to rejection is 30 days of rejection. So you basically do something every day where you know somebody's going to say no to you. And it's very empowering. At some point, one of them was to go somewhere and offer to buy something for someone for free. And you'd think that would be really easy, but I sat in a New Seasons trying to buy someone a cup of coffee for like an hour. And then, as I was shopping after that, people acted like I was a pariah. Like they were just like, who is that lady? So, but at the end of the day, it was like, finally, someone let me buy them a cup of coffee, and it was like, it was fine. So.
Learn the technical stuff. I say this more to an audience as being primarily in design, but we hire sometimes recent graduates or people in this area, and pretty much like they have to know stuff like Git. I mean, this really weird, obscure technical stuff, and it's good for everyone if you know a little bit of that. I look at it as like the time that I went to France, and it was like, I didn't actually know French, and I didn't know I was going there for very long in advance, but I just kind of learned a couple words. I watched some Pink Panther movies, and I did my best sort of like French accent. And I felt like people appreciated the effort. Like they knew I was an American. There was no, I wasn't gonna fool anyone. But I felt like they appreciated that gesture. And similarly, like a developer appreciates when a designer says, well, you know, I made sort of a style guide and I checked it into the code or something like that. You know, and then it's like, okay, so we can at least have a conversation about how we can collaborate the way that I like to at my desk over here.
Developers also love when you don't design things that are impossible to do, which is another reason to understand a little bit more. Step out of your comfort zone. So there are a lot of times, I mean, I talked a little bit about the rejection. That was something that I needed to learn. But also with our clients, there are a lot of times when they want us to know more about their business than we do. And they'll invite us to things like coffee cuppings, which I don't know how to slurp. I find the whole thing to be very overwhelming. But that's the time when we're hearing them talk about how they taste coffee, what matters, where they got it from. I mean, those are really the times when I start to understand their business more than when they come in and have a meeting with us and kind of say like, taste is important, you know, that kind of thing. So I would just say step out of your comfort zone and see if you can get involved, you know, take some tours, or just if you're working with someone, just do whatever you can to understand what it is that they're doing.
Work with people better than you, and this is true whether you're, you know, running a business or freelancing or whatever. Like if you're freelancing, you'll probably have to partner with people to do stuff, and if you're running a business, you hire people or work with other people. You know, people tend to think, like if you ever listen to like your own voice, you think, oh, I sound so weird, but everyone else thinks like that sounds normal. It's like we have this sort of bias how we view our own skills and abilities that is probably different from everyone else, and if you try to work with people better than you, at least you have a good shot at working with people on your level, if not better. If they're better, you can learn from them. If they're on your level, then fine, you'll be happy. But if you end up working with people, even if it's like a more prestigious job or something that aren't as good as you, it's just going to drive you crazy, and you don't want to do that.
So getting your name out there, I think we talked a little bit about that already. There's this idea that people have to hear your name about 5 times before they really start trusting you, but you can be responsible for 4 of the 5. And so that's something that I think the podcast is a good example of that, but we just do what we can through social media, through opportunities like this. Like anytime we get a chance to just go out there and get to know people and say hello, we're doing it.
Learn what you're good at. I will just say that it's pretty commonly known in sort of what I do running a business that recent graduates don't actually know what they're really good at yet, believe it or not. It usually takes a few years. And it might surprise you what you find you're actually good at, and it might just be finding a better way to do something than you thought you knew to do it. But I would just say that in my experience, it takes a while to learn that. So pay attention to that and see if you can see that in your career, that you're finding your skills are a little different than you maybe thought when you went to school.
The support causes you care for. I mean, we're all very lucky to use talents and interests in design, and so it's always been really important to us to take some of that time and pick some causes and rally behind them. This is one from a couple years ago. We donated a site to the Equality House, and our team was very excited about that whole process. They each wrote a blog post about why they were happy to be involved with it, and it just made us feel good, but we also felt like we have studied web design so much, we know so much about it. It would be really nice to be able to take all of that knowledge and help some causes that are important to us.
We have since stopped using Photoshop to put those images that it drives me crazy. It looks so fake. And finally, in my opinion, you will never have work-life balance. It's extremely rare, and I think the internet ruined it for all of us. But at least in my experience, and especially for me, I have a family, I have kids, and when I get home, it's really important to me to have dinner and have that kind of stuff. But at the same time, inevitably, I find myself opening the laptop at 10 p.m. So I just want to work on something, or getting up early, or going in on the weekends, or leaving work early, or whatever. There is not much of a boundary there, and there probably never will be unless, I don't know, the internet blows up. So I would just say, I don't think this is a bad thing. I just think it means that you really have to love what you do. I mean, we were meeting with the clients that we were talking about in San Francisco last year, and so we just, as you can see, we took our oldest daughter, and she's hanging out in the coffee shop too. It's just part of the job, so don't necessarily expect that. Just be sure that you really love what you're doing, and it'll be great. That's it. Okay. So does anybody fill out their question card?
Does anybody have questions for us?
I already have a question. I don't think you already have the question card. Can I just
protocol?
Well, the thing is that in order for it to be streamed, it has to be in the microphone, unless you feel comfortable talking on the microphone.
We've got the microphone right here if you want to come up.
You want to talk into the microphone. If you're talking, I'll rip it out. You guys want to do it in the microphone? Okay, go on.
I don't know if you can read my writing.
Yeah.
Nice words. Thank you, Sarah. There's other words.
So I have a friend who's in the design, she does more like the programming side of it.
Oh, now
And so technically, that's
I'll
the thing
just
that
read
scares
it.
me is, she's like, well, why don't you learn some code and here's some books and check us out. That was overwhelming. And she said, well, it changes. There's so many different ones. And I don't know if, as people come from a design background, if there's, a programming language, you say, you got to know this, or where is a good place to start for learning like the technical side of building a website or something like that?
A good question, thank you. I'd say that there's the concept of what can be done in a programming language, you kind of pick up from just browsing the web or trying to buy stuff online, that kind of stuff. And the concepts of like the version control, which is Git that we use religiously, I would say really whatever you're using, the concepts are the same. So if you just get the concepts, figure out how to Google for the things you don't understand, maybe spend a little time in a studio and ask them how they do that stuff. I don't think it's worth like learning a whole programming language, but sometimes there's like simple things you can show them by prototyping, and then yeah, I would say don't try to learn a programming language, but
Well, so
If you are a visual learner, I would suggest using lynda.com too, because you can watch videos instead of books are really hard for me to learn design from, so or programming. So I think that that's also another. And we use WordPress. I mean, wouldn't you say if he was going to learn something that actually?
sure, yeah, skip the programming, just learn though.
is that common, because I actually have a WordPress site, so is that common in the design field to use the WordPress format to design somebody's website for them?
Yeah, is WordPress common? Yes, it's certainly the most common there is presently in terms of like managing content. I mean, if you have something more complicated to build than that, and you don't feel like learning programming, I mean, at least try and draw a flow chart. I don't know. Like a lot of times you can use like products like InVision, services like that, where you can make a clickable prototype, or even just make one on paper. But you know, if you actually need programming, then you have to learn it. But I don't think
Can I ask a question now?
Yes.
I don't think you can read my writing.
It was just one word I couldn't read. So I was really trying to read it.
So I was kind of just wondering, like, I in my life also try to be really nice to most everybody, but sometimes you run across those people that just aren't nice to you. And what do you do about that? Because like, do you just break ties with a client because they're mean to you? Or like, I was just kind of wondering how you guys dealt with that.
Don't work with mean people. Yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to draw lines and say that you don't like the way that they're treating you, and you
we
don't
fired
want to hurt them. Yeah. I mean, for some people that's their management style, and they try, or you can just talk to them and say, this seems like you have kind of an aggressive management style, but I'm not an employee of yours, but I would love to collaborate with you, but I'm just not okay with this. And some people be like, oh, okay. And if someone's like, no, this is how I am, and you're not comfortable with it, then you shouldn't work with them. Remember we had the year of only working with nice people? Like, there was like 2 years ago, we said we wouldn't work with anyone that we didn't think was nice. And that was hard. We said no to a few projects, but now it's like everyone we work with is pretty cool. I think we've, yeah. Let's see.
Like,
Come on up, Jeremy.
That works.
My question is sort of based on that. Do you collaborate with like other companies that maybe have worked with clients in the past to figure out if you want to work with them or not? Or like, you know, if you have like a potential client, you research who might have already worked with them to see relationship, or you just
so like vetting them like you would a job interviewee or something like that.
Yeah, communicate with other design companies about clients. You just sort of.
No, that's a good idea. I actually should do that, but no, we don't. I mean, it's probably happened where they've talked trash about a designer and it's someone we know, and so we just asked them, but not very often. No.
I never cold called a designer and said
Right.
like, hey, this guy said you were a jerk, and that you were him.
I think we've got some questions
From that.
Yes.
from the pile.
Okay, the approved questions.
This one's pretty good. It's. This one. How should one seek out a web design coding internship? What do you look for specifically in that realm?
Should I use this to?
Yeah.
Please.
You know, in terms of the coding, a lot of times, since the Git and its workflow is so fundamental to what we do, we often just put a project up on GitHub and then just tell everyone who's interested in working to just check out that project, work on it, check it back in. Because not only does that establish their skills, you can see how they work through a problem, but also you can see like that they can use Git, which is, as I harp on, is so important that that's useful to make them do that.
Also, sometimes I mean, we get lazy and we just call Kate. So you guys should let people in your life know that you're interested in it. Or, I mean, we've had times when we didn't have an internship posted and someone wrote and asked to take Ray out to lunch and pitch themselves. And we've gotten interns like that too. So there's nothing wrong with just if you believe that you are a really good match for somebody and there's a specific reason why you're focusing on them, but don't ever send out emails that are like, to whom it may concern, I am your biggest fan. I don't know my name or not my biggest fan.
Tim, wear that silky smooth voice.
Oh, you like it? This is how do you divide the work between yourselves? What do you each focus on?
Good question. Why didn't we not even talk about that during your? Do you want to address that?
Sure. So when we first started working together, I would say Ray was primarily in production, and I was primarily the person that talked to people, and I was like the project manager, account person, and then we would sort of share the design piece, kind of pair design. But every year we would get together and we would make lists of what we're still doing, circle the things we love, and then make a list of things that we don't love, and then try to find people that were really passionate about doing those things that we weren't enjoying. And so I've done that year after year, and I think we're getting almost to the point where, I don't know, if I could just talk to clients all day or talk to people all day, I'd be really happy. And I'm still doing a little bit more project management. So we're always just kind of moving.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the creative director and Ken is the studio director, but we still wear a lot of hats.
And we'll do one more question.
This is a good one. Specifically for Candace, what advantage or role does having an anthropology background have in your line of work?
So anthropology is all about studying a culture and learning about that, trying to figure out through patterns what the cultural rules are almost. So you don't come with a playbook. You're kind of saying, I can tell because everyone does this, that this is a belief or a rule that they all hold that they don't even know that they hold sometimes. And so for me, going into working with our clients and talking to them about what they do, and then seeing, taking tours and getting into their world, I think that it helps us figure out not only what their story is, but also the story that's out there about them that they might not even know about. And I think it's just helped me kind of pick up a lot of how to study, basically. Even just going to school and learning how to write papers, it's like I write competitive analysis, and we write a bunch of documents that tell people about what we understand about them, and I think that's helped too.
Great, thank you guys so much for coming.